Now, Ezekiel, still chapter 10, the blowing up the space shuttle over Texas, as I get here and show you. And I will explain this and after I get to reading the duration of this. I'm still at, I'm start at verse 15, 10, 15. And the cherubim were lifted up. This is the living creature that I saw by the river of Sheba. He's telling you this was another place, another time, another season. He saw this vehicle when it took its first flight off the launching pad in Ezekiel chapter 1. This was the first, but this time was another season where he had been completed the space station and was using this vehicle for sinister purpose. But after the Iraq War, they used this vehicle, and this is when God blew this space shell up on the return after the war, and when they went back to retrieve the people that was conducting the war strategy from the war up there, God killed them. After when they came back, before they came back, he blew the space shell up because they had went up on the brink of the earth, fighting God's people from there, an innocent man. And when they got ready to return back, God exploded the space shell. And when the cherubim went, the wheels went by them, and when the cherubim lifted up their wings to mount up from the earth, the same wheels also turned not from beside them. He letting you know the wheels were the puller button. When they stood, these stood, and when they were lifted up, these lifted up themselves also. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheel. The life of the space shuttle depended upon the function of the wheel, because it was a reusable runway aircraft. Then the glory of the Lord departed from the threshold of the house and stood over the cherubim. And the cherubims lifted up their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight. When they went out, the wheels also were beside them, and every one stood at the door of the east gate of the Lord's house, and the glory of the God of Israel was over them above. This is the living creature that I saw under the God of Israel by the river Sheba, and I knew that they were the cherubim. Every one had 4 faces apiece, and every one had 4, excuse me, I missed something here. Everyone had 4 wings, and the likeness of their of the hand, and the likeness of the hand of a man was under their wings. He's still telling you the man was the controlling of the wing. He was the navigator as the pilot, but this was no living creature of flesh and blood. And the likeness of their faces was the same faces which I saw by the river Sheba. Their appearance and themselves, they went everyone straight by. This is conclusion of Ezekiel chapter 10, 9 and 10, where God called them to the Middle East to make war with them through Armageddon. Now, let me talk about this a bit. What man did when he created this vehicle to go above the earth and out in outer space, he considered he had to create an environment. I spoke concerning the matter that every time Jesus, when God called up Moses, Moses was transfigured. You find it in Deuteronomy. And in Kings, 2 Kings, when God called up Elijah, Elijah was transfigured. The chariots of fire with horses came down and consumed Elijah. He was transfigured into a spirit of fire. Even when Jesus came, and before he was crucified, Jesus transformed himself into three individuals, which was Elijah and Moses. You find that in St. Matthew chapter 17. So, but here was a person, and a vile person, because God used the name Satan, had went upon the brink of the earth in the flesh and returned in the flesh, not transport. But what he had did, he had created him an environment to protect his body, an armor, and made himself entombed himself in there, and he go into outer space and sit up and rule like God from above, as I spoke of in Isaiah chapter 14, that God spoke concerning this matter about the space shuttle. This is what God was talking about then. Well, I made this chart here up. It's similar to the first chart. As the vehicle re-enter into the atmosphere, Earth atmosphere, it turns cherry red. And once it comes down below the danger zone, the man began to test his wheel. This is when the pilot began to test it. This is when you see the lights coming on the wheel. Because by him using the word cherubim, he letting us know it was inward flight, not an outward flight. Once he began to test his wheels, Ezekiel chapter 10, God told Jesus to go in between the wheels when he opened his hatch and turn his body into living fire and explode the space shuttle. The year of 2003, after the United States of America invaded Iraq for the second time, God had Jesus Christ to blow up the space shuttle over Texas upon its return. I said when the characteristics of the prophecy matches the character, then we know the fulfillment of this prophecy is complete. The reason I took in place these here, for you to see where we are in Bible prophecy. Men must understand this here. And what was the trigger point? The knocking down of the World Trade Center building, Twin Tower Trade Center building. This was the act of God. According to the prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 9, God said, call them, every man in his destroying weapon, calling them to the Middle East to execute judgment on them. Other parts that it tells us that he was conquered. And what he did, when President Bush went over there, he made them take on a law called democracy. He told God, I will make them curse you to your face. And when I go back, get to that part, you'll find it in Revelation chapter 13. It will tell you when they came over there with blaspheming up on their forehead. The beast had blaspheming, meaning that they made blaspheme God by making the people take on the law of democracy and chosen the law of man above the law of God. Made God's people take on the law called democracy and place it before God's people. Now, I want to, since I got a little bit more time here, I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 4 and also put this on here. This is after all of Ezekiel. What I just read here was a prophecy by Ezekiel before Jesus was born, and after Jesus was born, Jesus spoke back concerning the space shuttle again concerning this matter here. Let's go to Revelation chapter 4, and this way I'll get through with the space shuttle and show you this. And okay, Revelation chapter 4. I told you the symbols to look for: the man, the lamb, and the eagle. If you notice in Revelation chapter 1 and chapter 10, the man always was the navigator. He always was spoken first.